I'm going to show you some basic things you need to know in order to do your assignment in Word. A lot of you will probably know this already, but just in case, let's see if I can help you along the way. To start with, you must make sure that you save your document by a sensible name. Remember that there are 500 of you, possibly 600 registered for this course. So the sensible thing to do is to save your document that you're working on with your name. So in my case, I'm going to save my document as PBL 310 assignment 1 M Murcott. And it's actually also quite important to add at least a year, if not a date, and possibly a version so that you know which version you're working on at any given time. This is something that I learned in practice, where you end up working on multiple versions of a document, such as a contract or a pleading for a client, and you get edits from a boss. Okay, so we're going to save that. Ideally, you'll have a particular folder for all your PBL stuff, and you should save it there. Then the first thing that you're going to do, which a lot of you probably don't do normally, is make sure that you turn on your show formatting button. This is standard for me. So the button, you find it looks like this, and you turn it on and it shows your formatting on your document so that you can see if there's a space or if there's a paragraph that you need to delete. That will help you see that you're presenting your work properly. Okay, so your instructions for the assignment are to use font Arial. So the first thing we're going to do is set that as the font. We're told Arial 12 is the correct font size for the text, and Arial 10 is the font size for footnotes. A big part of this assignment is to show you how to reference. If you don't have a Mac, which I presume is most of you, you're going to insert footnotes using the tab where it says References. On a Mac, that tab reads Document Elements, and there's a footnote insert button. On other computers, Word reads as References instead. So you're going to select the References tab. Okay, so let's start by giving a basic sentence about administrative law. So I'm going to use an extract from Corder's chapter in Quino's book, and I'm going to make the legal claim that administrative law has a very wide field of application. According to Corder, that is Hugh Corder, a professor of administrative law at the University of Cape Town, and then I'm going to insert a quote. Now for a quote, we use a long quote at least, we use a different formatting style. We first of all indent. So we indent using the increase indent button. Then we reduce the font size to show that we are adding a quote. And then we type the quote in. Hugh Corder says that administrative law is everywhere. The cell phone services that you use, the public transport system which brings you to your class, work or home, the preparation and packaging of the food you buy in a supermarket, and so on. Are all regulated by government agencies whose actions are subject to administrative law. Okay, so we've inserted that quote from Corder. Now, if we don't reference this quote, we will be committing plagiarism. So it's very important that we add a reference. So we do that by going into this tab, which on other computers besides Mac reads References, and clicking Insert Footnote. Now you'll see that the font on the footnote is not Arial, so the first thing we do is change the font to Arial. And we also need to make sure that we use the correct font size, which is font size 10. Okay, now the first thing that we do on the style that's been prescribed for you is align our footnote. So to align the footnote, we press the tab button. And the second thing we do is we go to our referencing style that is prescribed for you in the assignment instructions, and we look at how to reference a chapter in a book. Now, a chapter in a book is referenced first by giving the details of the author of the chapter. Now, as I mentioned before, the author of the chapter is Hugh Corder. So I'm going to add his initial and his surname. The second thing we do when we reference a chapter in a book is add the title of the chapter in inverted commas. So I'm going to open my inverted commas and I'm going to type in the chapter title, which is The Development of Administrative Law in South Africa. Okay, that is not enough for another person to be able to find the source if they wanted to look for it. So we need to add some more information. We need to add the edited volume where this chapter is found. So we then add in and the name of the edited volume in which this chapter is found, which is a book edited by Theo Quino, who's an administrative law professor at Stellenbosch University. We add the words ed, since he's an editor in this situation, not an author. And then we add the name of the book, which is Administrative Justice in South Africa, an Introduction. So we're showing the title of the book in italics. We're showing the title of the chapter in inverted commas. We're showing the editor of the book by using the letters ED in brackets. And we are showing the author of the chapter right up front. We're giving the author the most credit. Okay, what other details might we need to give more content or information to the reader in this situation to show the full details of the source? Well, we would also need to give details of the year of the book, and you will find that on the page with all the publisher information, which is 2015, and we pop that into brackets. And then finally, we want the person who is looking at the source and who wants to know what source we've used to know the page number. And the page number is page 2. Now, what this enables another person to do, or even yourself if you want to go back and see where your reference comes from, is to find the exact place where this quote comes from and to be able to look at the context in which it was used. Then you'll notice that we've got this little misalignment in the text that we want to be nice and tidy. So we're going to grab our hanging indent button, you'll see that if I hover over the ruler, I can either get the message left indent or hanging indent. What I want is to create a hanging indent. So I grab my hanging indent. Sorry, this is a bit tricky. And I drag it so that it lines up nicely. So you'll see I grab the hanging indent button, just this bottom one, which is this arrow here as opposed to this little blob thing there, and I drag the text across, and then it all lines up nicely. And that is how to insert a reference to a chapter in a book. Now, you'll see that this information here looks a little bit untidy, and in order to tidy that up, to ensure that the formatting doesn't look all squiffy on the right-hand side, I simply have to highlight my text and click on this button. If I hover over it, it says Justify Text. And when I do that, you'll see that at the end of the row, it's now nice and neat instead of being all squiffy. I must do the same thing for my footnote and make sure that it's not all squiffy on the edges and that it's nice and neat. This really shows up when you have a lot of text. Obviously with one paragraph or one footnote, it doesn't make a huge difference on the appearance of a document. Remember, people will judge you with reference to your documents. The first thing that clients and people see when they deal with lawyers is usually not a fancy suit, a fancy office, or you speaking in public. They usually see for the first time correspondence or legal drafting that you've done, and being able to present that correspondence or other legal drafting in a really nice, neat fashion can make a huge impression on a client and on your bosses and colleagues, etc.